Welcome to episode 179 of Auto Off Topic. What's going on, Brad?
Oh, not too much, Andrew. What's going on with you?
Oh, not much. You were here in person over the weekend, but we didn't do a podcast in person, so
We did not. We did not have time this
interesting.
time. Things got out of hand, or out of time, I should say, because we were doing all kinds of other things.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of Project Car updates coming,
Yeah.
but before that, it was Daytona weekend, right?
I believe that's called Daytona Speed Weeks.
It used to be Daytona Speed Weeks. I'm
Still is,
trying to
isn't
think
it?
of what they call it now. No, they don't do Speed Weeks. Used to be because it went from 24 hours of Daytona, I believe, right into Daytona, into the Daytona 500. Then they split them up more.
They still call it Speed Week.
I was trying to think of what what they call it on TV. Like,
That's the NASCAR Daytona 500 race to the cup full of cigarettes, sponsored by cell phones.
that was like Daytona Day. Daytona Day, that's what it is.
Yeah, probably. Call it
Um,
the big game without footballs.
yeah, that's what they try to build it up as. I mean, it is NASCAR is the most popular motorsport in the United States.
Even though it's floundering.
Yep, but it still is. It was the biggest. So even if it lost a little bit, it's still the biggest.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, and well, they started the race on Sunday, but then they had to finish it Monday night because of rain.
hmm
Because you can't race NASCAR in the rain.
No, they
And
don't. They don't have rain tires or wipers. Oh, they have experimented with them in the past on road courses. I remember a few years ago there was a Watkins Glen race that was run in the rain, and it was an absolute disaster.
oh, it was super fun to watch.
Oh, it was, but it was like watching a bunch of amateur drifters. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't not good.
But anyway, they ran the race Monday night. I didn't get to catch it. I was busy.
Yeah, I was
But
on I was on an airplane, unfortunately.
I caught the highlight because the big news was, of course, the big one that you always get at super speedways. Um,
Well, I
we'll
don't.
get
This
to
that crash wasn't the big one. That was just a crash at the end of the race. It didn't take out more than a couple of cars. The big one is when it takes out like half the field because everybody's so bunched together. But
I, I
nonetheless, it was a
I
big wreck.
believe they had a big one maybe before that.
Oh, they
The
definitely
reason
did.
it was on a restart because they have that rule where they can't end on a yellow. So they were really battling towards the end. Actually, and I'm even blanking on. I don't even know. So Ryan Newman was leading the race, and it looked like from the replay he was pulling out to block for the win.
Yeah, he was trying to keep his position in first because somebody had a slingshot like draft on him.
And I don't know who it was.
Um,
So
yeah,
we're such huge NASCAR fans. Anyway, somebody got in the back of him. They were trying to pass for the win. I mean, it was a pretty exciting finish. It was really, it was going to be one of the closest finishes ever. And he got into the back of the car. It got sideways, and then he turned toward the wall, which is super scary because it was almost 20 years to the day or 19 years to the day that
yeah.
Earnhardt was killed that way. And Earnhardt's car stayed on the ground, but Newman's car, as it turned, it lifted. And even though the roof flaps are there, they didn't keep the car on the ground. And once the car gets anywhere off the ground, it just overwhelms the roof flaps. And he was doing a barrel roll. And gosh, I forget who. Somebody then, as the car was rolling through the air, managed to nail the driver's side with the nose of their car as they're tumbling over him. And are you watching it?
I clicked the thing and I was clicking a second window, and audio started playing there. So I'm not sure what happened.
So, yeah, then Ryan Newman ended up crashing, and I know who won it was Denny Hamlin. ended up winning the race.
Yeah, for the second year in a row, actually.
Yeah. Um, but it was, I guess, this huge debacle because Denny Hamlin didn't realize that Ryan hadn't gotten out of the car under his own power. Like, they put up these like black shades around the car while they were trying to extract him. Like, it was really like nobody knew. Like, they're like, holy crap! Like, did this guy die? Like, they didn't know that. So people were kind of upset with uh, Denny Hamlin because he was like celebrating, and they kind of went through the whole thing, and they kept showing the replay. Um, yeah, it's kind of shitty, but it turns out, come to find out this afternoon before recording this, checking up on this story, Ryan Newman is awake, alert, talking to people in his hospital bed.
Yeah,
Non,
they haven't said the extent of his injuries. They said he's in serious condition, but not
but
nothing beyond
they
that.
said, yeah, they said it's not life threatening, but
Right.
he's probably got a lot of broken bones or something.
Not life threatening, but possibly career ending kind of thing.
Yeah, he is an older guy. He's in his 40s, which is pretty old for the sport. Interesting learning about him. He's got a BS in engineering from Purdue.
Oh wow.
So yeah, pretty smart guy. And they had talked about. I saw it on ABC saying that he had some sort of issues with some of the safety that NASCAR was taking. But of course, now when I was trying to research that, it's all about this crash. Like, it's difficult to get anything drilled down any further than this crash right now because it's just all up in the search engines. Um, and then I didn't realize these cars are still on the Car of Tomorrow, quote unquote,
Yeah.
chassis
Car of
from
yesterday.
2007. Yeah, the car of 10 years ago. And one of the things between when they switched to that car, I learned was that the driver's seat was shifted in 4 inches from the outside of the driver's side.
Yeah, as part of
So,
the
hmm,
like crash crumple zone almost in a passenger car.
yeah. But they're still running restrictor plates on super speedways, and we've talked about this before.
Well, restrictor plates had two purposes, though. It wasn't just to keep the cars close; it was also to keep the cars from doing 250 miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean, which made sense at the time. So it was after Bobby Allison's crash at Talladega, where towards the very end of the race, he blew a tire and took out part of the wall, took out part of the fence at over 200 miles an hour. And for the pole of that race, Bill Elliott set the pole at 212 miles an hour, which is kind of crazy for NASCAR because they
Yeah,
said the same year and that the Indy cars set the pole at Indianapolis at 216 miles an hour.
yeah, almost
And
the
the
same
difference
speed. Yeah,
yeah, the difference between an Indy car and a NASCAR, there's so much more downforce than an Indy car and aero.
but restrictor plates aren't only used in NASCAR. There's a form of it used in other kinds of racing as well. It takes more of its own thing in NASCAR because it brings the cars closer together and makes the, you know, quote unquote, the competition better supposedly. But I mean, other sporting events, other racing events, like even in rally racing, our beloved rally racing, they have turbo restrictors. You know, they have a
Yeah, but they
little.
don't cause accidents.
No, they cause cars to go slower.
Yeah, but people can tune around them, but they don't like they don't like bunch cars together. Like, that's
No, they definitely don't do that.
so it's just to kind of even the playing field so you don't have like a super like someone can't spend like so much money on an engine that they'd have like a 600 horsepower rally car engine.
Right.
That'd be kind of crazy. Um yeah, it's like I don't get why they still have them. They don't really need them, not with the technology now.
Well, no, and you could
And
also control
maybe
speed. You could also control speed with gearing too. I mean, if they had, you know, a certain set of gears they had to run on a super speedway, but that would probably also keep them bunched up close together because anything that limits the top speed of the car is going to keep these cars close together. So what do they have to do?
yeah, I don't know. They are coming out with a new chassis though instead for 2021. I don't know if they're still going to run restrictor plates. I think that's still up in the air.
Well, they're still V8 rear wheel drive cars at the core of it. So, I mean, they're drastically different, but they're still same engines, I think, aren't they?
Well,
They're
that's
still
what
going to
they're
be
talking
carbureted.
about. No, uh, they're gonna. Well, they haven't been carbureted since 14 or 15, I think.
Right,
They
but they're
switched
like
to
they're like throttle body injected almost. They have like a carburetor
no.
style.
I believe now they are actually going to injection.
Okay.
And uh, they do want to entice. They're trying to entice other manufacturers like Honda. Of course, Honda doesn't have a production V8, but they do have a V6 with turbos that they run in IMSA. So there is talk that possibly they will allow other engines so that other manufacturers will come and race in NASCAR. What do you think about that?
I'm 100% for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it will probably, again, like anything else, will tick off the traditionalists, but that happens in any kind of sport and any kind of um, platform that you're in, or even non-sports. But they've already made lots of changes that people have gotten behind, and maybe this will be the thing that puts that popularity back into the sport. It's
Yeah.
always been kind of ridiculous because they have been stock cars, and stock cars used to be, they were showroom vehicles that were modified to race, and then they morphed into tube frame vehicles. But at least that the production car the body was based on was still a full frame rear wheel drive V8 American car. And now, since the '90s, when Pontiac brought out the front wheel drive Grand Prix, and they were running those in NASCAR, and they were a far cry from the car you could buy on the street, when those were front wheel drive V6s and the race cars are rear wheel drive V8s, and up to now with, the Camrys and whatnot that are clearly not anything near what a street Camry is. So it's been kind
Mhm.
of ridiculous for a while anyway. So why not try something new?
Yeah, and they're pulling a lot from the IMSA playbook because NASCAR does own IMSA. So they're looking at, it's going to have IRS, 18-inch wheels with a lower profile Goodyear tire still. There is talk potentially maybe Michelin might get into it.
Some tire wars would be good.
Yep. They're going to go with a sequential gearbox, 6-speed instead of the 4-speed H pattern. But likely the shifter will still be on the transmission tunnel.
So
It'll just be an
it'll
up
look traditional.
down. Yep. Yeah. Again, potentially engines other than V8s and all carbon bodywork. So instead of having sheet metal that can be kind of massaged for aero, it's going to be a standardized carbon bodywork.
Okay.
And they're talking about it's going to be a single chassis and possibly built by
Delara or somebody.
Dallara. Yep.
Yeah.
Because even though they're an Italian company, and like the the Cadillacs that are running the DPIs
Yep.
in IMSA, those are Dallaras. They're just rebadged Dallaras with Cadillac power plants. Whatever, Chevy, GM, LS, whatever
Yeah.
they are.
General Motors based power
Um,
plants.
and I guess part of that, they also have a contract building Indy cars. So they have a factory in Indianapolis. So it's potential that they would probably build a factory in Charlotte or North Carolina.
It's going to be an expensive year for NASCAR if they're changing all of the cars that drastically in 1 year. It's going to essentially outdate every piece of equipment that they own.
Yeah, and they also said, unfortunately, with a lot of the standardization, they're going to be cutting some personnel potentially too. They want to also, doing all this will also lower the cost of racing in the long run, they hope. And they're talking about putting a freeze on any rule changes for the lower series, anything under the top level NASCAR, which is what? Monster Energy Cup now?
Again, it's the cigarette cup chase for the cell phone. I don't know what it is anymore. It's changed so much.
Yeah.
It was the Winston Cup forever, and then when the ban on tobacco advertising came in, it's been like a and rotating door of mainline sponsorships. So
Well, anyways, anything lower than that top level series, they're talking about freezing. That way, they can use all the equipment that's still exists for a few more years in the lower level of the series.
yeah, it would be a trickle down to the
Yeah,
lower series because the lower series are
yeah,
more of a budget series anyway. So that makes sense that they could get, the used equipment and stuff from the top level teams as they continue to improve their chassis. It kind of like
yeah,
being the little sibling. You get the leftover clothes.
yeah, exactly. So that was all very interesting. Just I think if it changed like that, and they're talking about doing some other, specifically this year, they're doing some race changes. I was reading just so I've been so far out of NASCAR. I was reading about it today. They're talking about doing a double header at Pocono this summer.
Okay.
So a Saturday Sunday doubleheader race, not like Busch Series, not Busch Series anymore, but
Top
like
level,
an
like top
actual
level.
top level. And then it would give them a 2 week break because apparently the broadcast deal with NBC is covering the Summer Olympics this year, which is 2 weeks. So that's part of the plan there. And then they're also saving, like, the teams don't have to travel to two different racetracks. They're just going to stay there for one weekend. So that's kind of cool. I mean, I should look into see what weekend that is. Pocono's not that far. That'd be kind of cool.
No, it's
Never
not too
been there.
far.
It's a weird track too. It's like a triangle, a trioval.
No, Trioval is Daytona, but
What's Pocono?
there's a different
I,
name for it. It's a strange shape. They don't call it a trioval though.
I thought it was a trioval.
No, Daytona is a trioval because Daytona has turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it has the little kink there in the front. That's
All
Daytona
right.
is a trioval.
Well, now this is trivia we're going to figure out because I thought it was a trioval.
No, Pocono Raceway shape. Yeah, it's like it only has 3 turns technically, I think, right?
Yeah.
They call it a triangle. Okay, so its nickname is the Tricky Triangle,
Okay.
but it's not a trioval. I don't think there's a name for the style of racetrack that it is.
It's a weird. I don't know any other racetrack that's like that.
According to this, it's 5 hours from Boston, so
Hmm.
wouldn't be too far of a drive.
Yeah, because I'm just not that into. Loudon's kind of boring after a while.
Well, it's not that it's boring. It's just we've seen the race there so many times, and it's the same thing all the time. And although 2021 might be an interesting year to go back and see the car of tomorrow, or
Yeah.
actually the car of tomorrow is this year, the car of the next car of
2021.
tomorrow.
In the year 2000.
Yes, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow car.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to see that. And actually, it would be good to get to a road course race this year because we've never been to a NASCAR road course race, and it would be neat to see them before they become basically sports cars.
Yeah.
Because that's what's
Yeah. I
happening.
should really get. Should really get to Watkins Glen.
They're going full independent this next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
That's right.
the difference between them and a IMSA sports car is going to be negligible almost. The racing will probably be pretty similar on road courses anyway.
I'm imagining what will look like. It's going to be like Australian Supercar.
Oh, I'm sure,
Yeah.
which is an amazing series to watch.
Yeah.
I don't think that we'll get some of the cool stuff like they do all road courses and they do standing starts and all that stuff. It's really neat, but I
No.
think it'll be kind of neat to see the I bet there'll be some crossover of some drivers and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that'll be a big promotional thing they'll do for both to try to get some NASCAR fans in Australia and some Australian V8 fans to watch NASCAR. It's a mutually beneficial relationship if they do because the cars are so similar now. And you even look at the V8 supercars and all the other touring car style races in Australia now. They run a similar NASCAR style body setup where it's a standardized body with a different nose cone to make it a Ford or a Chevy
Yep.
or Holden on a Vauxhall or whatever it is they run out there. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with the cars there at all either, but that will definitely be interesting. And I've always loved that V8 touring car style racing, so it might help me get back into watching some NASCAR stuff.
Yep.
But I think the one thing that NASCAR has always been averse to and would probably be good for them would be to make more road courses or utilize, not make more, but utilize more road courses.
They kind of did in the earlier days, and then it just got into the big spectator sport that it became in the late
Late,
90s and 2000s.
even before that, I would say late 70s is when it went more spectator oval racing.
It the sport exploded as a nationwide sport though in the late 90s.
Yeah, I think that was due
Like
to
that's when it
cable coverage and whatnot.
exactly. And that's when it realized like it was easier, and especially for spectators, it's easier to be on an oval because everybody can see the entire racetrack at once.
Right. But when you make something easy, you get the lowest common denominator of fans, which also brought the sport down, I think.
Yeah.
Because again, without, alienating listeners of the show, there's a certain demographic that's thought about when you think about the typical NASCAR fan. And it's not the sports car fan.
NASCAR dads?
Yeah, that's it. NASCAR dads from certain states. But nonetheless, I've always enjoyed NASCAR to a degree. When I was a kid, I watched it all the time, and I think you did too. You watched a lot more than you do now.
Yep.
And we were way more into it.
Well, it was the only thing that was on.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and the racing has always been good. It's always been a lot of good back and forth and passing because the cars, being the nature of the cars, they were pretty robust and could beat and bang off each other without too much of a side effect on aero or mechanical damage. So it's always been kind of exciting to watch. And I think if they make it the right changes and they put the right people in charge and they make it more of a global sport, it might help it, and it might make it interesting to watch again.
Mm-hmm.
The past 2 or 3 years, I've said I'm going to try to watch more NASCAR this year. I'm going to try to get back into it this year and learn the new rule changes. And because there's all kinds of rules, like races are run in stages now, and there's lucky dog rules about getting back your lead, your lap down, your down laps and stuff like that. And I don't understand any of it just because I haven't been watching it. But
Well, the other problem is too that it's on a Sunday afternoon, which if it's a nice day outside, I'm outside doing things. I'm not
yeah,
sitting in front of a TV watching NASCAR. And then if I have no desire to record it because I don't want to watch it afterwards because
yeah, you just
I
watch
already know what
highlights.
I already know what happened. But
Yeah, that's probably part of the problem. I know a lot of people try to watch, sports on recorded and try to avoid the results all day, and it's hard, especially when you become a fan of things, because naturally you start following things that are going to give you the results before you want them. You
exactly.
need to make it a point not to check your Instagram if you don't want to see who won the Indy 500, the Daytona 500 before you watched it.
All right. In other long-standing vehicle news, kind of like the car tomorrow keeps soldiering on, the Nissan Frontier update still in production for 2020.
Update, no update. Next story.
Yeah. I mean, this is like crazy, right? People have been knocking Mitsubishi for keeping their stuff in production.
Yeah.
But come on, this truck's been in production since the second gen has been in production since 2005.
But at the end of the day, they're still selling them. So people still want
Barely.
them. But they're the only small truck on the market. Up until 2019, they were still available with a manual transmission. So you could get a base model, simple truck with a manual transmission. And they made a truck for people that wanted it. If you wanted a no-frills truck, you bought a Frontier. But
Yeah,
that being said, as a consumer, I have a hard time paying $20-something thousand for something that looks like I could have possibly bought it from a used car lot for $4.
exactly.
That's a bit of an issue.
And then they made a big deal out of it that it's getting the all-new powertrain for 2020.
Yes.
It's getting a 3.8 V6 versus the 4-liter V6, but it makes more power.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, like, I screenshotted, like, I got a suggested Facebook ad because it was like, it was like Forester, all new powertrain. Sorry, Forester.
Frontier.
Frontier,
Yeah.
all new
Powertrain.
powertrain.
Yeah. They're also
Really
going to
funny.
lose the manual in 2020. It's a new transmission, and they're dropping the manual option. So that stinks.
Yeah, because this is how I for some reason got this sponsored post, Nissan Trucks, the 2020 Nissan Frontier debuts at the Chicago Auto Show with an all-new powertrain, the heart of the next generation Frontier,
Right.
coming spring 2020.
And I'm sure it had the pictures of the ghosted hood, so you could see the new engine with the hood closed. That's the picture I kept seeing.
No, this is like auto show photos.
Okay.
But yeah, I know what you're
So
talking about.
the all new, exactly the same truck. Auto show pictures.
Yeah, it's so funny.
But yeah, no, they
Just
won't.
like,
It's still got to be like 20 grand, so it's still a decent price for the base model, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of dig it. It kind of just soldiers on and it does what it does quietly, and nobody's really ever complained about it. And I think the only reason anybody's even brought it up is because they announced that they're going to be making a new one. I think if
yeah,
they just kept quietly making the 15-year-old Frontier and didn't say anything, in 2035, somebody would be going out and buying a new one and not even thinking about it.
I think they did quietly keep making it, and somebody forgot to tell them not to, like, oh crap, we forgot to tell them to stop making that, and they just kept doing it.
But that's Nissan's MO. How long has the 370Z been out now?
Oh, probably,
Almost as
I bet
long.
08. I think it came out in 08.
So you're talking 11 years, and the 350Z was a little shorter of a run. How long has the GTR been the same car now? 08 as well?
2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they've made, trim changes and engine changes and stuff, but essentially it's the same car. And the weird thing about the GTR is they still sell those too. And when
The
that car,
price keeps going up.
yeah, that's the thing. When that car came out, it was 70 grand, and now it's 230, 140, 200, whatever it costs. I haven't been in the market lately, obviously, but I know it's like twice what it was new.
Yeah. And like comes in the factory with the same amount of horsepower.
Yeah, it hasn't changed much. The MSRP starts now at 113 grand.
Weird.
But I mean, it looks just like the 2009 GTR. It hasn't really changed much. I don't know. I don't see I don't see it being a big news story that Nissan hasn't changed its truck. I think when Nissan does change its truck, it'll be a big news story.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's 113 grand for the 560 horsepower version.
Okay.
The 600 horsepower version, the Nismo package. Would you like to just take a stab in the dark of how much that costs? The top of the line GTR. If it's 113 for a base model,
175.
210.
Whoa.
So it's literally two base model GTRs to buy one Nismo. So
that's it. That was always the other crazy thing to me. This is a little tangent, but selling a GTR, at least here in the States, at a Nissan dealer and asking $200,000 for it, you do not get a $200 buyer experience at a Nissan dealership.
You definitely get a $200 buyer experience, not a $200,000. Yes.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Thank you.
You do get a $200 buyer experience. Well, it's the same problem.
You certainly do.
Yeah, it's the same
You'll
problem.
get some popcorn and balloons, and
it's the same problem that Hyundai has right now with their Genesis program. They're creating this premium brand, but they're forgetting to make the premium brand buying experience that Infiniti and Lexus did back in the late 80s.
Well, that's what's so weird. Infiniti exists. They could have just called it the Infiniti GTR and sold it at Infiniti dealers. And people here in the United States are like, oh, yeah, $200,000 for a luxury car? Not a big deal.
Now, there was no room with that screen to put the Infiniti analog clock in there, though, so they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, $200,000 for a Datsun.
Now you sound like an old man. But listen, I understand why the car is 200 grand if it's, the world beating limited production, whatever. And I understand somebody buying that car. I mean,
it was world beating in 2008.
It wouldn't be me spending $200,000 on I mean, $200,000 buys you a lot of other cars. It buys you a hell of a Porsche.
Yeah,
You know,
it
that's
does. That's the big problem. It buys you a really really nice Porsche.
yeah. The GTR was always kind of a world beating car at a much lower price than everything else. And I think in the '90s they were probably 40, 50 grand, right? They were probably like Corvette money.
Yeah. It yeah, exactly. It buys you a really nice Porsche or like two or three C7s and
Yeah,
maybe one and a half C8s.
it buys you a Porsche and a diesel pickup to and from the track with.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just doesn't seem like it's a wise purchase anymore. When the car came out at like 70, 80 grand, it was, car made sense. But for the car to be out for this long and not have any changes, I mean, not any significant changes. They've made, again, computer changes and engine changes and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I don't get
All
it.
right, we've gone off.
We're not the market for these cars.
Yeah, we've gone off on a
Not even
tangent.
yeah, we're not even the market for a $20,000 pickup truck. So I mean, let's be honest here. They're not selling this car to us, obviously.
Nope.
200
You had
grand here in
some.
Phoenix. I'm buying a house.
Yeah. You had some new diecast stuff that's coming out.
Well, I
You
actually
want
had a
to talk
couple
about?
interesting pieces of news diecast wise. One was we're a little late in the update because apparently it's been out for about 2 or 3 months. I didn't realize it. So there are a couple of premium diecast brands that generally make American cars, and muscle car era American cars. Uh, Greenlight is one of them, and Auto World is another. And the Auto World cars are almost what I would consider Tomica limited vintage quality for $6 versus 25 for Tomica car. These, for those who don't know, are 1/64 scale, so generally Hot Wheels sized kind of collectible diecasts. Greenlight came out with a Volkswagen Golf GTI, a first generation, so a Rabbit, the United States, which is kind of big news for a manufacturer that usually makes Mustangs, Firebirds, Camaros, Chevelles. They did make a Beetle and a air cooled bus before that, which kind of has a little bit of Volkswagen stuff, but it also appeals to the same crowd that is into the muscle cars. The Rabbit GTI doesn't, but I, for one, I'm kind of neat to see these manufacturers of diecast cars stepping up to what the current trends are in the market, which is obviously foreign cars. But the big news is Auto World, who is, again, a much more high end version of these diecast cars, is doing a Dodge Stealth, which is not anything relevant at this moment in time.
Is it an early one or a late one?
It's as a first couple years body style, so the black headlights and the good looking ones.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of neat that it's happening, and I'm totally down with it. And I can't wait for it to come out because, as a diecast collector and a Mitsubishi diecast collector, a Dodge Stealth is nothing more than a 3000 GT, and I'm sure it will look good on the shelf next to the 3000 GTs, which I already have. So it's just kind of neat that the market is shifting a little bit in even the diecast world, because they're realizing that there's a market that hasn't been tapped, other than by the Japanese manufacturers. Hot Wheels has got their line of Japanese cars has been doing very well, at a basic $1 Hot Wheels car or a $5 premium Hot Wheels car, but these cars are like the next level. So it's neat to see it, and it just goes to show the trends of the real car world just in scale. So things that used to be kind of laughed about are starting to become collectible, and they're only laughed about by people who didn't know.
Boy, Hot Wheels has really gotten their money worth out of the 510 casting.
They have, but they also haven't rested on it either. As their technology has improved, they've improved the casting as well, and they've recast it now twice, I think.
Really?
If you look at one of the first ones next to the one of the ones that's out now, the one that's out now has much more crisp details and like defined lines around the grills and the lights and the bumpers and everything. So they haven't been like resting on their successful casting. They've made it better and improved it over the course of the 10 years that it's been out now. So
I just say that because that new Track Day, is it a Track Day series is out?
Door slammers, I think.
Door
Which
Slammers.
is weird because door slammers are generally known as drag cars, but I won't let that get in the way. Yes, no, they have a 510 in that line.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have for diecast stuff today. I'm excited to see the stealth.
Yep.
I've always
And
liked it.
on to what everyone has been waiting for, the Starion update, what we teased on Instagram.
Actually, we didn't tease it on Instagram. I teased it on my personal page.
Oh, okay. I kind of teased it on Instagram because you could see the
Oh yeah, the
video
video
of
you
it.
did. Yeah.
Um, I feel like we talked about it a really long time ago. Can you give like the super quick version of how it ended up where it was?
Okay.
Because I think it was literally almost 9 years ago. Because I feel like you were going to our friend was having an anti Valentine's Day party.
Yeah, it was almost 9 years ago to the day. It was
Yeah.
February 12th, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I was heading to a gathering at a friend's house. The same friend actually who sold you the WRX.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think you had to get pizzas or something.
I went a different route that I normally would have taken because I was stopping to pick up pizza on the way there. Which obviously, you know, do your one little change and the butterfly effect happens. The next thing you know, you total Astarion. So I went a different route, and it was the middle of February. It was wintertime. There had been a lot of snow that year. A lot of snow. That was the year that every 3 or 4 days it snowed, 6 inches to a foot, and we had I think 150 inches by the end of the winter.
No, 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 no.
It was up
That
there.
was 2015.
Okay, well this was maybe 100 inches by the end of winter. It was one of the really bad snow years because I have a picture of the car right before the accident happened, parked in front of the snow pile at work, and the snow pile is, 5 Starions tall behind it. So it was definitely a lot of snow that winter. Regardless, the point of it is the snow piles on the side of the road were very high, and I was driving down a main road, and somebody came out of a side street without the benefit of stopping and looking to make sure nobody was coming down the main road. And I T-boned their, obviously, Nissan Altima. They were 100% at fault. The car was, written off by the insurance company, but it was a 2011 insurance claim. So the car being in 1984, they didn't take the car at a salvage yard. They're just like, we don't want this. You keep the car. Here's the money. So of course I did. It doesn't get a salvage title or anything. It stays clean title. Not that that matters. Um, Car got parked. I couldn't find fenders. I couldn't find a spoiler. I couldn't find a few of the parts that I needed for early flat body Starion. And then I found parts. And once I found parts, it had already been probably a year. And I said, okay, I'm going to start working on this car. But instead of just fixing the front of the car, I'm going to get ambitious and I'm going to fix all of the rust on the car and make this thing like super nice. So I did something that I'll probably never do again. And I preach this theory to everybody all the time now. Don't take the car all the way apart unless you have a really serious plan and a lot of money. So I took the car all the way apart. The entire interior was out. All the lights were out. It was stripped down as far as it could go and still be sort of mobile. And I brought it to a shop that I was working at the time and put it on the chassis lift frame machine and started cutting out the rust. Well, moving a little bit forward, I didn't finish that job of changing all the rusted panels out. And I wound up leaving that particular job. And then I had to move the car out of that job because I wasn't there anymore. And then I didn't have a place to work on the car. And the car sat waiting for a place to work on the car. And then the car sat some more. And the car sat some more. And then about 5 years in, I decided to pull it out and start working on it again. And I quickly ran out of space to work on it again. And the car sat and sat and sat. So those of you who know me know it's been an interesting decade of my life. But in this decade of my life, things have gone from good to bad to good to bad. And now ultimately they're great again. And the car has always kind of been there on the sideline. So I decided that the best plan to do would be to put it back together in a, I don't want to say restored manner, but in a drivable manner, just so we can enjoy it.
Oh, it's not restored.
Not restored, no.
It's restored to mobile. mobile status.
I'd say it's a little beyond that. We did put some patches in the floors, um, and we did a couple other things to it to make it a little bit more livable. But I mean, everybody's probably seen pictures of it by now. It's a white car with a red fender and a maroon fender and a maroon header panel and one maroon headlight door and a bright red front bumper and a black and gold two-tone fender on the other side. And it's kind of an off-white color, and one of the doors is bright white. And there's a lot of black primer spots that just covered some bare metal. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it kind of has a neat attitude about it, and I kind of like it. And I'm not embarrassed to drive crappy cars, obviously, because that's kind of what we've made our life around here, as the Auto Off Topic podcast goes. We have nice cars, but we also have had most of our fun in crappy cars. So I'm kind of okay with it. And we're going to get to another topic in a little bit too about the acceptable level of disrepair and the acceptable amount of hacking that you can do to a car and still be okay with driving the car. And this car has both of those things in spades, like really, really strongly. There's no denying this car is not something that you would expect anybody to get, and I don't expect anybody to get it. Anybody who does get it, I appreciate, but you don't have to get it. I get it, and that's all that matters. One thing I have learned in the past 10 years is it's more important to make yourself happy with things than to do what you think other people should do. So other people think you should do. So I've been told 1,000 times to throw this car in the trash, and I just won't do it. So the car has a neat story, much like a lot of my cars. I get lost in that story, and I don't think of it as metal anymore. I don't know, Andrew, should I tell a story of the car's origin again? It's probably been a while.
You can
touch on it real quick. So I bought the car from the original owner. It only has 83,000 miles on it, 84,000 miles on it.
Well, hold on. I found it on Craigslist.
Yes, this is true. I'll give Andrew.
But I think, what happened? Oh, I
didn't want it.
No. I ended up trading, quote unquote, trading you the Mirage for it. Yeah, basically.
So you found the car.
I paid for the car, and you gave me the Mirage, and then because this is an $800 car,
right?
Again, our magic number. So I paid for the Starion. You gave me the Mirage. I ultimately probably got the better deal.
Well,
because that car lasted a lot longer.
So the theory here is that we love $800 cars, and they're usually Mitsubishis. I think you found the car, and you're like, I want to go look at this. And I was like, all right, cool. That's a neat car. Let's go look at it. And we went and looked at it, and you were like, it's crappier than I think it should be. I don't think I want it. And I was like, it's just crappy enough. I think I want it, but I shouldn't buy it because I don't have the cash or the room for it right now. And I was daily driving the Mirage at the time. And that's where I think it was like, you were like, hey, I would drive the Mirage. And I was like, sweet, $800.
Yeah, I wanted a winter car, but I didn't want a rear-wheel drive winter car.
Right. So I was the dummy who gave you the solid, non-rusted running Mirage.
It was definitely not non-rusted.
I think at the time it was still pretty good. This is pretty early on.
Yeah, at the time it was pretty rusty.
All right. Well, it was less rusty than the Starion was. I gave you. All right. Let's put it this way. I traded you my perfectly good running daily driver for a 1984 Starion of unknown origin in somebody's backyard covered in leaves.
That's on brand for you.
100% on brand. I'm ready to do it again. Who wants a Volkswagen for a rusty old Starion? So we bought the car. We brought it home. We cleaned it up. And it actually cleaned up really nice other than the giant holes in the quarter panels. The interior is mint. It turns out that the owner who I bought it from, the original owner, bought it in 1984, the first year his company was in business, because he was successful in his first year in business. So he said, I'm going to buy myself a brand new car, and I'm going to buy my mom a brand new car. And because he was his first year in business, he wanted something that represented that. And Mitsubishi's first year in business, full first year in business in the United States, was 84. 83 officially, but 84 for the first full year. So he went to Mitsubishi in Lynn, which is now Mitsubishi in Danvers, where both of us have worked at different times. And he bought the brand new '84 Starion ES Turbo. It's the only package it doesn't have is the Technica talking dash, which wouldn't be a Technica if it wasn't this Conquest. But anyway, and he bought his mom a brand new Cordia, which unfortunately was not around to purchase in 2009 when we bought the Starion. Um, so I bought the car. I loved it. I drove it. I dailied it. It was already rusty, so I didn't feel bad driving it in the wintertime. Car ran great. It turns out it had a brand new engine put in it in like 2002 or 2003 because he brought it to the Mitsubishi dealer for service. Believe it or not, that late in his life. And they forgot to put coolant back in it when they were done. And he left the parking lot and immediately blew it up like, a mile down the road. So they owed him a brand new engine, and he got a brand new Mitsubishi long block put in at the time. So the engine in the car only has like 10,000 miles on it. So that's part of the car's story as well. On top of that, it has what Mitsubishi calls the VELNAS system, which is Vehicle Electronic Lap and Something System Control. It's basically an early, what do you call it, a trip computer. So it does your instant fuel economy, your average fuel economy, your miles to empty, but it also does lap times and a couple other things for using the car on a track, which is interesting. It's pretty rare setup. I've never seen another one in a vehicle working, and it works perfectly in this car. So it's another reason that I've fallen in love with the car because of that. And the final reason I fell in love with the car is because it has on a set of Enki 92 wheels in a 15x7 with a 0 offset that were bought in 1986. And in 1986, my father was the Enki wheel dealer in the area. And these wheels came from my father's wheel store in 1986. And I have the receipt and everything from when he bought the wheels brand new. So that's also kind of a cool connection to have with the car. So I've always just kind of stuck with this car for whatever reason. It's been stored in 5 or 6 different places. Ultimately, it's been in my parents' yard for the past 4 or 5 years, much to their wonderment and enjoyment. But finally, it's together again. We've been slowly piecing it together, slowly hammering out the bodywork in the front, getting the fenders hung back on it, getting the bumper hung back on it, getting everything going back on the car. Car always ran. We had a coil go out on it once. No, that was the other car. Never mind. We had minor little things go wrong with it over the years. The old fuel in it kind of sat and gummed things up a little bit. But ultimately, last time we were using it and playing around with it and putting it together, the fuel pump died. So we kind of parked it and said, well, next time I'm back in Massachusetts, I'll order a fuel pump ahead of time, and we'll try to slap a fuel pump in it real quick and see if we can get it running again. And if it's something beyond the fuel pump, maybe we'll try to make a harder to make decision about the car. So I bought a fuel pump, shipped it to Massachusetts. I was in Mass for 2 days this weekend, and we slammed it together. And that's where Andrew comes in, if you want to tell the story of the Titanic Starion fuel pump lines.
Well, I noticed that our buddy Ron had swapped his fuel pump because it died. So I was like, hey, man, Can you, because he dropped the tank in his not that rusty or very, very not rusty Starion.
Not that rusty, not rusty at all, Starion.
Yeah. So he dropped the tank in his, and I was like, hey, man, you can send me some more detail shots of that because we're going to do it in Brad's car without dropping the tank. There's an access panel under the back hatch. Like most Mitsubishis have this. They're pretty good about it. However, the fuel pump is not in the tank. Just the sending unit. So the fuel pump is on the top, but it's just forward of this opening. So we were trying to decide what to do with it. Definitely did not want to get into dropping the tank because it's kind of a nightmare.
Also because rusty New England gas straps and bolts.
That's what I mean. So nice thing about Mitsubishi is they don't actually use gas straps.
Oh, right.
They use
bolted
gas tank straps. They're bolted. So those gas tank straps don't rot. But boy,
do those bolts rot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we decided to take a cutoff wheel, cut some slots up from the opening and then peel the sheet metal up. And right there, sitting on top of the tank, was a very rusty fuel pump. Well, at least the regulator part, or kind of like fuel damper, I don't know what we want to call it, on the end of it was like super rusty. And we're kind of looking at it. My dad was there looking at it. We're like, I don't know if it's going to come apart. I was like, Well, either it comes apart or it breaks. If it breaks, then we'll just throw the car away
Well,
or come back later and make a new fuel line, which is kind of a pain in the ass. But
the other thought was if it doesn't work, we'll just buy a Jegs fuel cell and slap it in the bag.
sure. But I was like, well, let me try it. So I got some big old channel locks and held on to the fuel pump like it was an oil filter, and then turned. I did spray some seafoam deep creep on there. Turned that regulator part off, or damper. I don't know exactly what it does. It's kind of on the end of the fuel pump.
It's
It
not.
doesn't have a pressure
It's
line
not a
to it.
regulator. It probably has something to do with the way the fuel flows. It probably like atomizes it properly or whatever somehow.
No. Your atomization would
No,
take
I
place
had
in
a
your.
way up in the intake. I understand that, but maybe atomization is the wrong word. But it has something to do
That's
with
why
the
I'm
rate
saying.
of fuel flowing out, but not a regulator.
That's why I'm saying it's like a fuel damper. It's dampening the pulses that you would get out of
Which is
the pump.
what I was saying, but using the wrong vernacular. I know
Yeah.
atomization is the wrong word, but
So it's got a big old honking 21 millimeter like uh, nut part of it. So I put it on there, grabbed it with the channel locks, turned it, and it wasn't that tight. It came undone. I couldn't believe it. Of course, it's got copper crutch washers between it, so it didn't really rust together. But I was super surprised that it even came apart
it
because.
really looked like it had become one piece of metal.
Mhm. So we managed to take that out. The other end was just a rubber hose. It popped right off. Put in the new pump. Aftermarket pump fit. Worked fine. Put new connectors on the wires. Put them on. Screwed it on. It leaked
Yeah, pretty badly.
because uh, we had the original crush washer that was on there while I was undoing it, like flinged off under the car somewhere. I don't know where it went. Super annoying. And then in the package of stuff, there was new crush washers, and there was a weird looking one that looked like a snap clip with like little tabs on it.
Right, and didn't look like it fit anything we had, so we didn't use it.
No, it looked like what you would put on the end of a pump to hold the filter on if it was an in-tank pump.
Right.
That's what it looked like, that clip. So I found some other copper crush washers from brake jobs, and we took a round rasp and hollowed it out just a little bit more because it was almost the right size, because it needed to fit on the outside edges of this damper thing without slipping inside of it. I got that on there, cranked it down. It sealed, didn't leak. Car started up fine after we charged the battery for 24 hours. And then we're cleaning up, kind of jumping ahead here. We found the washer that flung off. It looks just like the one that was in the package with the 4 tabs on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But whatever, our bespoke, handmade, artisanal copper gasket works just fine. And then there was a couple other things. There's like a plastic shield over the thing that we just kind of cut off to get to it
Right.
because it wasn't really doing much of anything.
I mean, it seems
And
like it
then-
probably keeps crap from building up in the front of the pump where the connections are, as that's probably its general purpose.
Well, I guess it was still rusty.
Obviously, it didn't work.
Car was filled with acorns and mouse poop and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, big shout out to Naomi for helping clean the interior of the car from all of the mouse droppings and acorns from mouse houses.
So now we've got a running car with a flap of sheet metal sticking up in the back hatch. So what did you do to solve that?
I hit it with a hammer. That was about it. I hit it,
Yeah,
with,
and
I
then-
hit it with a hammer and I shaped it back to the shape that it was supposed to be. We had cut 2 slots into the floor, probably about a foot, a little less than a foot maybe, and peeled it back. I was able to hit it back with a hammer, knock it back into shape pretty well, and then just put some metal tape over the top of it. Ultimately, it goes underneath like the carpet and stuff in the back, so you'll never see it anyway, and it keeps out the crud from going into the car with the metal tape. And the little door that goes over where you would think the fuel pump is, but actually it only goes to the sending unit, clips in behind it and then bolts into the front of it, so that will actually hold down the piece of metal that we cut anyway. So it works.
Yeah, and if you ever need to change it again, you can just bend it back up.
Yeah, I think that the ultimate plan for this car involves driving it across the country, and I'll probably be knowing that there's a Chinese fuel pump in it. We'll probably buy another Chinese fuel pump to put in the glove box, in case it decides to die somewhere in Iowa, and I could just change it to the side of the road at that point.
Yeah. So then you put all the rest of the interior back together. Well, except for like sort of.
We're missing one important aspect that we're going to cover in our next segment. We did use old license plates from the car. To patch the holes in the floor that I cut out during my initial hopes and dreams of restoring this thing to let pretty much concourse levels.
So before that, in the summertime, we had talked about this. We used a piece of the old rotted fender after you put the nose back on the car to patch a large hole behind the driver's seat.
Correct.
And we did an okay job with that. We had a couple open spots. That
if anybody looked at it, they would say somebody who's learning to weld did this. There's no question.
Yeah, it was acceptable.
So then it was acceptable because we didn't pay for it.
Yeah. And you still had some other holes that we were going to weld, but we figured, let's do the old hot rod license plate method.
Correct, because it's cheap, easy, and quick. And doesn't require prep.
Yeah, so we actually pop riveted the plate down over the hole, and then there's 2 holes, and then you seam sealed all the gaps.
Yeah, these weren't structural pieces. They were just like where the driver's feet would be. Over the years, obviously, water from your shoes and salt and everything just kind of ate away some holes in the floor right there. So we just cut out the rust to like a square around where the rust was and put maybe a 4-inch by 4-inch piece of license plate over it, pop riveted in. The only thing I had to buy for this, endeavor was a thing of seam sealer. So once we pop riveted them in, we seam sealed the top, finished putting the interior of the car in. We didn't put the front carpets in yet because we were still waiting for the seam seal to dry and all that stuff. Yeah. I still have to put the whole console in, and that will take some time before I put the carpets in.
It's more of a car, though.
I mean,
you put the taillights in.
I put the taillights back in, put a plate on it, checked all the lights. We rolled
all the lights worked.
All the lights worked. Yeah. We rolled it up on the lift, lifted the lift up, seam sealed the bottom of the car. Actually, the one thing I remembered after I left and put the car away and came back here is I wanted to spray paint the bottom of the car flat black where the license plate were, just to cover any extra bare metal, not spare metal. And we didn't do that, but next time, no big deal. So that was good. Everything seemed okay. Decided that the best bet at that point, when you haven't driven a car in 1 year shy of a decade, would probably be to drive it without the benefit of changing any fluids.
I took it around the block.
I took it around a big block, probably 5 or 6 miles.
We should mention, so during that fuel pump, it's just smelled like straight varnish.
Yeah, the fuel pump
straight, like straight
paint thinner.
What do I want to call it? Paint thinner. Yeah.
Didn't smell good. But we also had about 5 fresh gallons in there. So we figured that the old fuel and the new fuel would make enough, 73 octane fuel to go around the block. It's probably about what it did. So around the block, car fires right up, runs super smooth till about half throttle, and it falls on its face. But that could also be the old fuel with no firing properties left in it. It
probably needs some fuel system cleaner. Probably needs an air filter.
Next time I'm back there, I'm going to do air filter, fuel system cleaner, plugs, wires, typical tune-up stuff, oil change, just the typical tune-up stuff you need to do to a car anyway. Again, the car's been sitting for almost a decade. That's a long time for
And
a
it
car to sit.
needs a radiator.
So we did find that out in the test drive. It never got hot because it's not a big hole, but there's a pinhole in the radiator. And when I parked the car, it was steaming because the fluid was spewing out of the radiator onto hot engine parts. So
It probably rotted between the core and the end tank
more than likely.
because it was at the bottom, and as the car was just sitting, there was just water sitting in there.
Yeah.
Even though it had coolant, it sits
But
for 10 years.
It's also
It rots it out.
it's also an original metal tank radiator. So I could probably send it out and have it rebuilt.
Yeah,
Probably
absolutely.
It's probably the best bet for that. Because it shouldn't be too hard to take it out because early Starions don't even have electric fans. They have a clutch fan in the front of the engine. So literally just take off the shroud and pull the radiator out. It won't be a huge deal.
Might cost you $200 for it, but
At this point, after 10 years without driving the car, I think $200 is $200 well spent. So, but the car, hey, listen, the car drove. It drove pretty well considering. It pulls nice and hard up to half throttle and falls on its face. But again, that's probably to be expected based on everything that's, we just said. I'm excited because that means next time I come out there, I can actually probably almost drive the car. Maybe I'll try to get a radiator sent there so I can put a radiator in it in a couple hours versus sending one out to be rebuilt. Who knows? But the important thing is the car can be driven. So I just need to finish putting the interior together, and I think we still got to put the front grille in, but that's not a huge deal, and that's really all that's left. So, and then we'll probably spray paint some crappy white paint over the primer spots to make it look a little more presentable. Maybe pop rivet some metal over the holes in the quarter panels. But overall, it's a car again, and it drives again, and I drove it again, and let me tell you, that felt good. Because this car's been in the back of my mind for a decade, and even driving around the block was a pretty big victory. And we keep talking about how we're trying to get all of my old garbage gone through and taken care of, and we started with the Raider, which is unfortunately broken again, and then moved on to the Sapporo, and we fixed things in the Blue Colt, and we're just kind of going through everything and making things work again. And the Starion runs and drives, and that's makes me super happy. And I can't thank you and your father and Naomi enough for spending the whole entire day on Sunday helping me do that. So it's good. Things are moving well, and I think the ultimate plan for that car, because of my sentimental attachment to the car, I don't think it's ever going to be worth restoring that car. It's a lot of work.
Oh, no.
It needs a lot of body work. I think the best bet is going to be to drive the car across country. Take all of the good parts out of it, the engine, the suspension, the nice New England non-sun faded interior, and buy a rolling shell or running shell out here with a sun-baked interior and sun-baked paint. Send that shell out for paint, and then transfer all of my good parts onto a nice West Coast shell out here, and have a running, driving, minty fresh Starion for a couple of grand tops.
Yeah,
I think that's the ultimate plan for that car. So, and restore the wheels on the car and all that stuff, and make it nice, and make it the showpiece that I originally dreamed about the car being when I finished restoring it. So, I don't think that's too ambitious of a plan. I think it's a lot more reasonable than what I have, and I'll just take, let's say, legitimately everything out of the car, including that Velnas computer system and that 10,000 mile engine, and transfer it all over to a nice solid shell. So. Yep. I already have a line on a couple of shells out here that are.
You've already taken out a title loan and
a lien.
Phoenix.
Yeah. No, there's two here in Phoenix and there's two in Vegas, and I kind of have my pick of all of them for super cheap monies, and one of them will be that plan for that eventually. But I think for now the plan is just to enjoy the car in Massachusetts when I'm there visiting, and use it as basic transportation, and go from there. So
cool. You think you would drive it to Radwood, Philly?
That's potential. Okay. There's a lot of to do that would have to happen in a short period of time to make that a thing. Because how far away is that? That's in March, April
5th.
So That would require me getting there, getting the car running and driving with new radiator, interior in the car, and a full tune-up to make sure it's ready to go in a month. So
Yeah.
it's the problem is I don't think I think it would require 2 trips.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Probably.
don't have 2 trips in me financially in order to make that happen. So I do want to try to get to Redwood, Philly. I may just either fly to Boston and drive with you, or just fly into Philly and have you pick me up there, because it was a lot of fun last time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to go back again this time. So we'll see. It's up in the air. Before that is Redwood, Austin, and I'm going to that with the Eclipse. So
Yeah, I'd like to get I'm planning on taking the lot, so do the normal springtime oil change, and I think I'm actually going to try to get to doing the black window trim
yeah,
because it's
absolutely.
it shouldn't take too much work. Won't take any really disassembly of the car. Well, the cowl panel needs some paint, so I'll pop that out. I already have the paint. I have the sandpaper. I have plenty of masking stuff. I just never got to it in the last couple of years. So I think that'll be my goal. It's kind of low risk.
Yeah,
Should be able to get it done.
that's a relaxing
It'll look
project.
nice. Yeah.
It's low risk. It's not difficult, and the results will be really good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's probably the only thing I plan on doing that. Just like I said, the oil change, general checkup, make sure it's okay. Should be to drive that far. And
do we want
that's what I'm
to
gonna do with
go
that.
into our discussion here about the acceptable level of hackery? I'm going to save that for a later date.
We can save that
Yeah,
if you
I
want.
think so. I think that I want to do a little more research about some things, and we'll talk about that later. So
Well, let's cover some events that's coming up. You mentioned Redwood, Austin. That's February 29th.
yep, leap day.
Yep.
I will be caravanning out there with Ron in his Japanese Trans Am, aka the Starion.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually, quick project car update on Ron's car. We had an incident a couple weeks ago where his rear glass got shattered.
Yep.
He found a rear hatch in the correct color north of Sacramento, California, which if anybody who's not from the West Coast doesn't know, that is nowhere near Phoenix. So he rallied himself in his truck and drove straight there to the junkyard to buy that hatch in the correct color. Bought the hatch, turned around, bought a Buick Riata as well for some reason, which now that I've seen it and sat in it and played around with it, I kind of understand. It's kind of a terrible car, but it's kind of a neat car. We'll have Ron on in the near future to discuss that purchase. And rallied his way right back down here to Phoenix in a day and a half, which is pretty impressive considering how far away he went to get this part. So earlier in this past week, I went over there and helped him swap the hatch over. It's possible with one person. It's better with two, so you don't wind up with 2 broken hatches classes. But so his car is all set now to go as well. So he'd be debuting that new hatch at Austin.
Cool. And then there's Redwood March in South Carolina.
Yep. Neither of us are going to that one.
Nope. And Philly, April 8th. And then
April
Southern New
5th.
Hampshire Cars and Coffee.
April 5th.
Sorry. Southern New Hampshire Cars and Coffee first event is April 19th. And that is the Coffee Factory in Salem, New Hampshire.
Excellent.
All right. Anything else?
I think
Where can they find you?
My Instagram is TSISS350.
And you can always find us, Auto Off Topic Podcast on Facebook, Auto Off Topic on Instagram, and me, Race and Anger on Instagram. So keep your cars analog and aim for the roses.
Yeah.